A very old man is lying on a bed in a foreign country, and he knows he will not see the morning. He is 147 years old. His name was once Jacob, but God changed it to Israel, and now that name, Israel, is about to become something bigger than one man. It is about to become a nation, because tonight, this dying man is going to call his 12 sons to his bedside. One by one, and he is not going to hug them. He is not going to whisper that he loves them. He is going to look each one in the eye and speak a word over him that will echo for the next 4,000 years. Picture it, the room is dim, oil lamps, the smell of a long life ending, and 12 grown men, shepherds, fighters, one of them a ruler of Egypt, standing in a half circle around their father, waiting to hear who they are. Because that's what he's about to tell them, not who they were, who they will become. In Hebrew, the word for tribe is shevet. And here's what most people miss. Shevet doesn't first mean a group of people. It means a staff, a branch, a rod cut from a tree. So when the Bible talks about the 12 tribes of Israel, it is literally saying, 12 branches off one dying trunk, 12 directions the same bloodline would grow. And every branch would grow differently. One of these sons would become the line of King David, and the line of Jesus himself. One would be cursed and scattered, then rescued and made holy. One would be sold into slavery by his own brothers and rise to save all of them. And one, pay attention to this, one of these 12 names will not survive to the last book of the Bible. It will be quietly erased from the final list of the redeemed. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why. This is not a story about 12 tribes. This is not a story about a map of ancient land. This is not a story about a family tree you were supposed to memorize in Sunday school. This is a story about 12 kinds of human being, and the strange, uncomfortable truth that all 12 of them are living somewhere inside you. The betrayer, the coward, the forgotten one, the one everyone counted out. Let's meet them, one name at a time, starting with the firstborn, the one who had everything, and lost it. Reuben. He was the firstborn, and in the ancient world, that word meant everything. The firstborn got a double portion of the inheritance. The firstborn became the head of the family when the father died. The firstborn carried the name. Reuben should have been the tribe of kings, the tribe every other tribe bowed to. Listen to how his father greets him. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, the beginning of my strength. And you can almost hear the pride starting to rise. And then Jacob says one more word. Unstable, unstable as water, you shall not have preeminence. What happened? Years before, Reuben had slept with his father's concubine. It was a grab for power, a son trying to seize his father's authority while the old man was still breathing. And Jacob never forgot it. So on his deathbed, in front of everyone, the firstborn hears the truth about himself. You had the strength, you had the birthright, and you threw it away in one reckless night. Here's the part nobody tells you. Reuben's tribe never produced a single judge. Never produced a king, never produced a prophet of note. They settled on the wrong side of the Jordan River, drifted to the edges of the nation, and slowly faded into the background of the whole story. The most gifted son became the most forgotten tribe. Not because God ran out of grace. Because Reuben, the man, could never hold steady long enough to become who he was born to be. And maybe you know someone like that. Maybe, on a hard night, you've been afraid you are someone like that. All that potential, all that promise, and a pattern of instability that keeps washing it away like water. But stay with me, because the next two sons are worse. Simeon and Levi. Jacob calls the names together. Because they sinned together, years earlier, their sister Dinah had been violated by a man in a neighboring town. And Simeon and Levi wanted revenge, so they lied to that entire town. Convinced every man to undergo a painful ritual that left them defenseless. And then walked in while the men were still in pain and slaughtered all of them. Every one. So when Jacob comes to these two, he does not bless them. He grieves over them. Cursed be their anger, for it was fierce. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. Read that again. Their own father is asking God to scatter them, to break them apart so their violence can never again combine into something that terrible. And that's exactly what happened to Simeon. His tribe was absorbed into the land of Judah, swallowed up, until it basically disappeared as a distinct people. The curse landed, the scattering was real. But watch what happens to Levi. Because Levi's story does not end at the curse. Generations later, when the whole nation of Israel bowed down to a golden calf in the wilderness, one tribe refused. One tribe stood up and said, "Whoever is on the Lord's side, come to me." It was the tribe of Levi. And that same fierce intensity that had once made them murderers, God redirected it and made him the priests. The tribe of Moses, the tribe of Aaron, the only tribe allowed to carry the presence of God. Do you see what just happened? The curse of scattering became the blessing of priesthood. Because the Levites had no land of their own, they were scattered into every other tribe, living in every town, teaching in every region, carrying God to every corner of the nation. The very thing meant as punishment became the very thing that made him holy. The knife became a candle. Hold on to that, because you're about to need it for the next name. Judah. If any son deserved to be passed over, it was Judah. This is the man who, years before, looked down at his own brother Joseph in a pit and said the coldest words in the book of Genesis. "What profit is it if we kill our brother? Come, let us sell him." It was Judah's idea to sell Joseph into slavery. Judah's mouth that turned a brother into money. And later, Judah's own life fell apart in scandal after scandal. So when the dying father turns to this son, you brace yourself. You expect a curse worse than Reuben's. You expect grief deeper than Simeon's. Instead, Jacob says this, "Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons shall bow down before you." Judah is a lion's cub. The betrayer gets the blessing of a king. And here's why the name itself matters. In Hebrew, Judah is Yehudah, and it comes from the root yada, which means to praise. The tribe that would produce King David, and King Solomon, and every king of the southern kingdom. And finally Jesus of Nazareth himself, that tribe is literally named, Praise. Then Jacob says something no one at that bedside could have understood. "The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until Shiloh comes." Shiloh, it's one of the most mysterious words in the entire Bible. Most scholars believe it means, the one to whom it belongs, the true and final king. On his deathbed, 4,000 years ago, a dying man looked at his fourth son, the son who once sold a brother for silver, and pointed straight down the centuries at the coming Messiah. This is the pattern you cannot unsee now. The firstborn who had everything lost it. The violent ones were scattered, and one of them was made holy. And the betrayer was crowned. Not one of these outcomes was earned. Every single one was written by a God who refuses to let your worst moment be your final name. And we're only 4 sons in. Before we meet the rest of the brothers, stop for 1 second, because you've probably already felt it. One of these names has been landing a little too close to home. Maybe it's Reuben, and the potential you're scared you're wasting. Maybe it's Levi, and the hope that the worst thing about you could somehow be turned into the best thing about you. Maybe it's Judah, and the quiet ache of wanting to be more than the thing you did. That's not an accident. These 12 names have been mirrors for 4,000 years. And if this is speaking to you, do me one small favor, subscribe, so the next part doesn't slip past you. And leave one word in the comments, the name of the brother you see yourself in so far. Just one word. Reuben, Levi, Judah. I read them. Now, back to the bedside. Because 7 brothers are still waiting for their names. And one of them is about to plant the seed of the darkest turn in the whole story. The next 2 brothers are almost never talked about. And that's a shame, because between them they hold one of the quietest, most beautiful pictures in the whole chapter. Zebulun and Issachar. Jacob says Zebulun will live by the seashore, a haven for ships, his border reaching toward the trading ports. Zebulun would become the merchants, the tribe with salt on their hands and foreign coins in their pockets, the ones who did business with the whole known world. And then Issachar. Jacob uses a strange image, a strong donkey, crouching between the sheepfolds. It sounds almost like an insult, but it isn't. Issachar would become the tribe that stayed home and worked the land. And later, the scriptures say something remarkable about them, that the sons of Issachar were men who understood the times and knew what Israel ought to do. They were the thinkers, the scholars, the ones who read the season and told the nation which way to move. And here's the beauty most people miss. You can picture the 2 of them. Old Jewish tradition holds that these 2 brothers made a deal. Zebulun would sail and trade and earn, and Issachar would sit and study and pray, and Zebulun would support Issachar so that Issachar could give himself fully to the things of God. One worked so the other could worship. 2 brothers, 2 callings, 1 covenant between them. If you have ever quietly funded someone else's calling, paid the bills so a spouse could serve, worked a job you didn't love so your kids could chase something you never could, then you already belong to the tribe of Zebulun, and you should know that Scripture never once treats the one who sailed as less than the one who studied. But now the tone shifts, because the next name is where the shadow enters, and you can feel the air change. Dan. Watch this closely. Jacob says, Dan shall judge his people. A good start. Dan would produce Samson, the strongest judge Israel ever had. But then the old man's voice seems to darken, and he says something no other son hears. Dan shall be a serpent in the way, a viper by the path, that bites the horse's heels. A serpent. Of all the images in the Bible, that is not the one you want spoken over your name. And here's what actually happened. The tribe of Dan became the first tribe to fall into idolatry. In the book of Judges, they set up their own private idol and their own private priesthood. And centuries later, when the kingdom split in 2, a king named Jeroboam built a golden calf and placed it in the city of Dan, and told the whole northern kingdom, "Here are your gods." The city that carried the serpent's son's name became the address of Israel's idolatry. Hold that thought, because it's going to matter more than you expect. Then come 3 more brothers, and their names sound almost like a poem. Gad, a raider who would be raided, but who would strike back at the last. Asher, whose name means happy, the tribe of rich food and royal delicacies, olive oil flowing like a river. Naphtali, a doe let loose, that bears beautiful words, a free and graceful tribe in the green hills of the north. And this is where the stakes climb from personal to national, because most of these tribes, Reuben, Gad, Dan, Asher, Naphtali, Zebulun, Issachar, and the rest of the northern group, they are the ones history swallowed. In the year 722 before Christ, the empire of Assyria came down like a flood. They conquered the northern kingdom of Israel. They did what ancient empires did. They dragged the people away, scattered them across foreign lands, and resettled strangers in their place. The Jewish historian Josephus, writing around the end of the 1st century, describes those tribes as carried off beyond the Euphrates, lost to the land that had been promised to them. And they never fully came back. This is the origin of one of the most haunting phrases in all of history, the 10 lost tribes of Israel. 10 branches of that dying man's family tree, cut off and carried into the dark. For 3,000 years, people have searched for them, mapped them, invented legends about them, but the plain truth of Scripture is quieter and sadder than any legend. They forgot who they were. And so the world forgot him too. 10 tribes, fading into the fog of history. But 2 remained, and one of the 2 was about to give the whole story its most impossible ending. Joseph. Of all 12 sons, this is the one the old man loved most, and everyone in that room knew it. You'd have known it too. Watching them, Joseph was the boy with the coat of many colors. The dreamer, the one his brothers hated so much they threw him in a pit. Sold him to slave traders, and dipped his beautiful coat in goat's blood to make their father believe he was dead. Think about that. For more than 20 years, Jacob believed his favorite son had been torn apart by a wild animal. 20 years of grief over a lie his other sons told him. And Joseph was carried down to Egypt in chains, sold, accused of a crime he didn't commit, thrown into a prison and forgotten there for years. And this is where it becomes remarkable, because that slave, that prisoner, that forgotten man, rose to become the second most powerful person in all of Egypt. And when a famine swept the world, and his brothers came crawling to Egypt begging for grain, not knowing the ruler they bowed before was the very brother they had sold, Joseph could have destroyed them with a word. He didn't. He wept, and he said the sentence that holds this entire chapter together. You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good, to save many people alive. So when Jacob comes to Joseph on that deathbed, the blessing overflows. It's the longest, richest blessing of all 12. Joseph is a fruitful bough by a spring, whose branches run over the wall. And then Jacob does something he does for no one else. He takes Joseph's 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, and he adopts them as his own. He says, in effect, These 2 boys will not be your children in the tribal list. They will be my children. 2 tribes, not 1. That's why, when you count the tribes of Israel, the math gets strange. Because Joseph doesn't get 1 portion, he gets a double portion. Through his 2 sons, the slave who lost everything ends up with more than any brother in the room. The double portion that should have gone to Reuben, the firstborn who threw it away, it lands here, on the son who was sold into slavery and never stopped trusting God. Now, remember the promise I made you at the very beginning. That one of these 12 names would not survive to the last book of the Bible. That it would be quietly erased from the final list of the redeemed. It's time. Turn to the book of Revelation. Chapter 7. The Apostle John is given a vision of the last days. And he hears the number of the sealed, the servants of God marked for salvation. 12,000 from every tribe of Israel. And John lists them, one by one: Judah, Reuben, Gad, Asher, Naphtali, Manasseh, Simeon, Levi, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, Benjamin. Count them, read that list slowly, and count them, and you will notice something is wrong. 2 names are missing. Ephraim is gone, and Dan is gone completely. The serpent's son, the tribe Jacob warned about on his deathbed, the tribe that raised up the first idol and gave its name to the golden calf. When the final roll of the redeemed is called, Dan's chair is empty. An early church father named Irenaeus, writing in the 2nd century, noticed this too, and he made a chilling guess that Dan was left off because of its history of idolatry. The tribe that traded the living God for a statue one too many times. We can't be certain of the reason, but we can be certain of the fact. The name is missing. And here is the weight of it. God gave Dan the same start as everyone else. The same father, the same blessing spoken over the same bed. Dan even got the honor of judging his people. But over centuries, one idol at a time, one compromise at a time, that tribe chose the serpent over the shepherd, until the name simply wasn't there anymore. Picture that dying father one more time, a man at the end of his life, calling his children close, one by one, to tell each of them the truth about who they are and who they could still become. If you have ever sat by a bed like that, held a hand going cold, leaned in to catch the last words of someone who spent their whole life loving you, then you understand what Genesis 49 actually is. It is not a genealogy. It is a father, out of time, refusing to let a single one of his children walk into the future without knowing they were seen. 10 of those children would be lost to history. 1 would be erased from the final book. But the story does not end in a graveyard of forgotten names. Because turn the page to the very last chapter of the Bible. To the New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven. And John sees a city with 12 gates. And written over those 12 gates, carved in light, standing forever, are the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. The betrayer's name, the scattered ones, the forgotten, the sold, all of them, gates now, doors that swing open into the presence of God. Every name that dying man spoke into the dark of an Egyptian bedroom ends up written in light over the gates of eternity. So what do you actually walk away with, after standing at the foot of that bed for 12 names? 3 things. First, the 12 tribes were never just 12 tribes. They were 12 destinies, 12 kinds of human life laid side by side, the gifted one who couldn't hold steady. The violent ones, the merchant and the scholar, the betrayer, the serpent, the slave who forgave. Genesis 49 is not ancient history. It is a map of every kind of soul that has ever lived, including yours. Second, the name you were born with does not decide the name you die with. Judah was a betrayer before he was the line of kings. Levi was a murderer before he was a priest. Joseph was a slave before he was a savior. Not one of them was trapped by their worst chapter. And neither are you, whatever name you think has been written over your life, coward. Failure, the forgotten one, the one who blew it, that is not the final word. Because in this book, the final word always belongs to God. And third, here's the one I want you to carry out the door with you. Dan lost his place one small compromise at a time, but every other name, no matter how badly it began, ended up carved in light over the gates of the New Jerusalem. Which means the only tribe that truly disappears is the one that stops coming home. Everyone else, the scattered, the sold, the ashamed, gets a gate. God did not build 11 gates and a wall. He built a door for every single kind of person you just met, including the kind you're afraid you are. So let me ask you the question I've been building toward this whole time. Out of all 12, the betrayer who became a king, the quiet one history forgot, the son who was sold and still chose to forgive, which tribe do you see when you look in the mirror? Don't overthink it. Say the name in the comments. I read every one. Because here is the last thing. And then I'll let you go. That dying man spoke 12 names into the dark of a bedroom in Egypt. 4,000 years ago, he had no idea those names would outlive empires. He had no idea they would end up written over the gates of heaven itself. And he had no idea that, one day, in a city that would be built in light, there would be room for one more name at those gates. Yours.